The Adventures of Tom Sawyer by Mark Twain and read by Ngamoko Nikora. Part 5, Chapter 22. Tom was famous once again. The old people loved him, and the young people wished that they were like him. His name appeared in the village newspaper. There were people who believed that he might someday become President of the United States, if he escaped hanging. Now all were kind to Muff Potter, forgetting that they had not been kind before. Tom's days were days of joy, but his nights were filled with fear. Indian Joe was in all his dreams. Poor Huck felt the same. His name had not been called in the meeting house because Indian Joe had run away. Huck's story was not needed, but Huck was afraid that his part in the story might be told. Huck no longer trusted any human being because Tom had broken their agreement. Every day, Muff Potter's thanks made Tom glad that he had told his story. Every night he wished that he had not opened his mouth. Sometimes Tom was afraid that Indian Joe would never be caught. At other times he was afraid that Indian Joe would be caught. He felt sure that he never could be safe again until Indian Joe was dead and he had seen the dead body. Indian Joe had not been found. The slow days passed. With each day, Tom became a little less afraid. Chapter 23. Dead People and Spirits. There comes a time in every boy's life when he wants to hunt for gold and silver that pirates have put deep in the earth. This desire suddenly came to Tom. He tried to find Joe Harper, but failed. He tried to find Ben Rogers, but Ben had gone fishing. Then he met Huck Finn. Tom took him to a place where they could be alone, and he explained. Huck agreed. Huck always agreed to do anything that would require time but not money. He had no money, but much time. Where? Said Huck. Oh, almost anywhere. Do you mean that there is money in the ground somewhere? No, it is in very special places, Huck, sometimes on islands, sometimes in old boxes under the end of a dead branch of an old tree, but mostly under the floor in a house where the spirits of the dead gather. Who puts it there? People who take it away from other people. Why do they put it in the ground? If I were rich, I would spend my money and enjoy it. I would too, but these people are different. Do they never return and get it? No. They think that they will, but they forget where it is, or they die. How are you going to find it, Tom? Where will you look? We tried hunting for gold on the island when we were pirates. I know where there is a house full of spirits, and there are old trees with dead branches everywhere. Is there gold and silver under every dead branch? No, that would not be possible. How do you know which one to choose? Choose all of them. Tom, we shall be working all summer. What is wrong with that? We might find $100 or valuable stones like diamonds. How would you like that? Huck's eyes were shining. Give me the $100 and you can have the valuable stones like diamonds. Have you ever seen a diamond, Huck? I do not remember that I have. Kings have diamonds, and I have heard that some of them are worth $1 or more. Kings have hundreds of them. I do not know any kings, Tom. If you go to Europe, you'll see them jumping around. Do they jump? Jump? No. Why did you say that they jumped? Oh, I mean only that you will see kings everywhere. Not jumping. Why should they jump? But you will see many of them. The boys got some gardening things used for making holes in the earth. Then they walked 3 miles to an old tree with a single dead branch. They were very hot, and they sat in the shade of another tree to rest and smoke. Tom said, Huck, if we find some money, what will you do with it? Spend it, before my father takes it and spends it. What will you do with yours? I'll get married. Married? Tom, you would be a fool. Think of my father and mother. Fight? They were fighting all the time, I remember. The girl I will marry won't fight. Tom, they are all the same. Who is she? I won't tell you now. If you marry, I will be more lonely than I am now. No, you won't. You will come to live with me. Now, we must start working. They worked for half an hour. They found no box of money in the hole that they were making. They worked another half hour. Then Huck said, Is the money always so deep in the ground? Not always. Perhaps this is not the right place. They began again on the other side of the tree. They worked without taking a break. Then Huck stopped to dry his hot face and said, Where do we try next? There is an old tree on Cardiff Hill, behind Mrs. Douglas's house. That might be a good place. But won't she take the money away from us? It is her land. If you find money in the ground, it belongs to you. It does not belong to the owner of the land. That was fine. The work continued. After a while, Tom said, We must be in the wrong place again. Oh, I understand. What a fool I was. We must know where the shade of the dead branches under the light of the moon in the middle of the night. That is where we must hunt for the money. The boys stopped work and returned to the tree that night. It was a lonely place. They talked a little. When they felt that the right hour had come, they found the shade in the moonlight under the branch and began to work. Their interest was strong. They worked fast. The hole grew deeper and deeper. But every time they found something hard in the earth, it was only a rock. After a while, Tom said, Huck, we are wrong again. We can't be wrong. We saw the shade of the branch, but perhaps the time was not right. We guessed, we did not know. We should stop trying, Huck said. We never know the right time. And I do not like the middle of the night with spirits of dead men around. I feel that there is one behind me all the time, and I am afraid to turn. I feel the same, Huck, and they almost always put a dead man in the hole to guard the gold and silver. They do? Yes, they do. I have always heard that. Tom, I do not like to be where there are dead people. they will certainly cause trouble for us. And I do not like it. Suppose this one should lift his head. He is only bones now. Suppose his bones should speak to us. Stop that talk, Tom. That is a fearful idea. Huck, I do not like this place. We can try another. Where? The old house where the spirits gather. Tom, I do not like spirits or their houses. Dead people may speak to us, perhaps, but they won't come quietly behind us, as spirits do, and then suddenly make fearful noises. But Huck, spirits travel around only at night. We can go to the house in the day. That is true, but people never go near the house in the day or the night. That is because a man was killed there. But nothing is seen except in the night, and then only blue lights are seen. When you see those blue lights, Tom, you know that spirits are near, because only spirits use them. I agree to go to the house if you want to, but I do not think that it is safe. Chapter 24. Sleeping Spirits. A box full of gold. On Saturday, soon after noon, the boys met at the dead tree. They smoked and talked in the shade. Then they worked a little at their last hole. They had no great hope, but Tom said that people sometimes stopped working when they had almost found the box of gold. Then another person came and with very little work discovered it. However, they failed to find anything, but they felt that they had done everything that was possible. When they arrived at the old house, they were first afraid to go in. It was completely quiet there under the hot sun and very lonely. Then they went without any noise to the door and looked in, shaking with fear. They saw a room with an earthen floor. There was a place where a fire had been built, windows without glass, and dust everywhere. They entered. They did not dare to speak. Their ears were ready to hear any small sound. Their legs were ready to carry them quickly outside again. Soon their fear became less. They looked around with interest. Then they wanted to look at the room above. They found nothing up there and were starting to go down when, "Be quiet!" Tom's voice was shaking. "What is it?" Huck asked, becoming white with fear. "There! Hear it?" "Yes, we must run." "We can't move. They are moving toward the door." The boys were on the floor, looking down into the room below, through holes, sick with fear, waiting. Two men entered. Both boys had seen one of the men in the village. He seemed to be very old. He had long white hair hanging around his shoulders and much white hair growing on his face. It seemed to the village people that he could neither hear nor speak. The other man was a stranger. He was wearing very old clothes. His face was not pleasant. He was talking as they entered. The two men sat on the ground with their backs against the wall. "No," said the other man, "I have been thinking about it. I do not like it. They will catch us." "You fool," said the man who was believed not to be able to hear or speak. "You are afraid." boys were now shaking with fear. This man was Indian Joe. Joe said, "We were not caught before." "But that was different. They may catch us here in this house," Joe said. "I wanted to leave here yesterday, but those boys were playing on Cardiff Hill. They would have seen us." Those boys were Tom and Huck. They were shaking again. What would have happened to them yesterday if they had come to this house? They wished that they had waited a year before coming. The two men had brought some food and they began to eat. After a while, Joe said, "When it is dark, go home. Wait there until you hear from me. I will go to the village once again. Then we will do the job we planned. And then we will run far away. Now, I need sleep. You stay here as a guard." He was soon asleep, and then the guard, too, was soon sleeping. The boys took a long, thankful breath. Tom said, "Now's our chance. Come." Huck said, "I can't. I would die if they opened their eyes." He would not move, and Tom started to leave alone. But the old floor made so much noise that he stopped, almost dead with fear. Slowly, time passed until the sun was going down. Indian Joe sat up and called the other. He said, "It is almost time for us to be moving. What shall we do with our money? Shall we leave it here until we are ready to run? 600 silver dollars is heavy to carry. We can put it in the ground, deep." His friend agreed. He went to the place where the fire had been built, raised one of the big stones from the earthen floor, and took out a big bag of money. The boys began to forget their fears. $600 would make 6 boys rich. They knew where Indian Joe was putting it. Indian Joe was in a corner, making a hole in the ground with his knife. The boys did not dare to speak, but they looked at each other often. These looks were easy to understand. Their meaning was, "Oh, how glad we are now to be here." They heard Indian Joe's knife strike something hard. "Look here," he said. "What is it?" said his friend. "It is an old box," Joe said. "Help me lift it." "No, I have broken it open." He put his hand in the box and then brought it out again. "Man, this is money." The two men looked at the handful of money. It was gold. Now the men found the gardening things that the boys had been using and had placed in another corner when they came into the house. Using them, they started to work. They soon had the box out of the earth. It was not large, but it had once been very strong, with iron bands to hold the wood together. "There are thousands of dollars here," said Indian Joe. "Now it won't be necessary to do their job in the village," said the other. Indian Joe said, "You do not understand. I am not doing that job only for money. Wrong was done to me, and I am going to pay them for it. I need your help. Go home until I tell you to come." "What do we do with this money?" "Put it in the ground again." "Yes." Delight for the boys above his head. "No." deep sadness above. Where did those gardening things come from? There was fresh earth on them. Who was here? We must take the money away. I have a good place for it. At the number 2 place, under the cross. It is nearly dark enough to go. Indian Joe went from window to window looking out. Then he said, "Who could have come here? Do you think they are in the room above us?" The boy's breath stopped. Indian Joe put his hand on his knife and started to go up. The boys could not move. Their strength was gone. They heard Indian Joe coming. Then they heard the sound of breaking wood, and Joe fell to the ground. "No people are up there," his friend said. "They saw us coming, and they ran. They thought there were spirits or devils, and they are running yet." Soon the 2 men went out of the house with the box of gold and the bag of silver dollars. Tom and Huck watched them through holes in the wall, but would the boys follow? No. They were happy enough to get away from the house with no broken bones and then return to the town. They did not talk much. They decided to watch in the town for Indian Joe and then follow him to the number 2 place. Tom had a fearful thought. Indian Joe said that he would pay wrong with wrong. Was he talking about us, Huck? Feeling suddenly weak, Huck almost fell to the ground. Chapter 25. Doubts. The adventure of the day troubled Tom's dream that night. 4 times he had his hands on that gold. 4 times he opened his eyes and discovered that he had nothing. In the early morning, as he was in bed thinking of his great adventure, it all seemed strangely far away. It might have happened in another world or in a time long past. Then the thought came to him that the great adventure itself must be a dream. The amount of money was too big to be real. He had never seen as much as $50 before. He decided to find Huck and let Huck talk. He would ask Huck no questions. If Huck did not speak of the adventure, then Tom would know that it had been a dream. Huck was sitting on the edge of a boat with his feet in the water. He seemed very sad. "Hello, Huck." "Hello yourself." "No words for a minute?" "Tom, if we had not put our gardening things in that corner, we would have that money." "It was not a dream. It was not a dream, but I almost wish that it was." "Dream? If Indian Joe had found us, you would know that it was not a dream. I have had dreams about him all night." "We must find him. Find the money. We must find his number 2 place. Perhaps it is the number of a house." "No, Tom. The houses in this town do not have numbers." "Perhaps it is the number of a room in a public house for travellers. Those rooms have numbers." "Oh, that is the answer. There are only 2 public houses here. We can quickly learn about number 2. You stay here, Huck, until I return." Tom was gone half an hour. He learned that in one public house a well-known young man lived in number 2, but in the other public house, number 2 was always closed. No person seemed to know much about it. However, a light had been seen in the window the night before. That is Indian Joe's number 2, Huck. I think you are right, Tom. Now, what will you do? Let me think. Tom thought a long time. Then he said, I will tell you. The door of number 2 opens on a little street at the back of the house. We must wait for a dark night. Then we shall try to get in. But if you see Indian Joe, follow him. And if he does not go to that number 2, it can't be that place. I am afraid to follow him alone, Tom. It will be night. If I see him, and if it is dark, I will follow him. I promise. He might be going straight to that money. You must not weaken, Huck, and I won't. Chapter 26. Number 2. Huck as guard. They waited 3 nights. The 4th night was dark enough. The public house closed at a late hour, but Tom and Huck were near. Indian Joe had not been seen. No other person had been in the street behind the house. The 2 adventurers moved quietly toward the door in the darkness. Tom stopped to remain as a guard, and Huck went forward. Then there was a long wait. To Huck it seemed hours. What had happened to Tom? Had he died from fear? Huck's breathing was very fast, and his heart beat madly. Suddenly Tom came rushing past. Run! Run! Run for your life! They never stopped running until they were at the other end of the village. There stood an old building, now not used. As they entered, rain began to fall heavily. Huck! It was fearful. I tried and tried to open the door, and then suddenly it opened without effort. I stepped into the room, and Huck, I almost stepped on Indian Joe's hand. No. Yes, he was there, asleep on the floor. Drunk, I believe. I turned and ran. Tom, did you see that box? Huck, I did not wait to look around. I did not see the box. I did not see any cross. I saw only a cup on the floor beside Indian Joe, and more to drink. The room is full of it. Tom, if Joe is drunk, now's the time to get that box. Is it? You get it. Huck began to shake. No, I believe not. And I believe not, Huck. Listen, Huck, wait until we know that Indian Joe is not in there. We can watch every night, then we can go fast and get the box. I agree. Let me watch all night and every night. You do the other part of the job. I will. And now the rain has stopped. You go and watch, and when you want me at night, come to my window and make a noise like a cat. Chapter 27. The Picnic. Indian Joe's Job. The next morning, Tom heard glad news. Judge Thatcher's family had returned. Both Indian Joe and the box of gold were not so important for a while. More good news made the day perfect. The following day, Becky would have her picnic. Before 11 in the morning, the young people were at Judge Thatcher's house, ready to start. Soon the happy group was walking toward the river. They were going to ride down the river on the old river boat. Sid did not go. He was sick. Mary stayed with him. Mrs. Thatcher said to Becky, "You will return late. Perhaps you should stay all night at the house of a girlfriend who lives near the river." "I can stay with Susie Harper, Mother." "Good, and be a good girl." The boat took them 3 miles down the river. There it was tied to the shore. The crowd ran off the boat and into the forest. Soon shouting and laughing could be heard from many places. After a while, all were hot and ready to rest. They met again near the boat and began to eat the good things they had brought with them. After eating, they rested in the shade of the big trees. Then there was a shout. "Who is ready to go to the cave?" All were ready. They got lights to guide them in the darkness and started to walk up the hill. The cave could be entered through an opening in the hillside. A door had been placed across the opening, but it was not closed. Inside was a small, very cold room. The walls were rock and always had water running down them. It was a strange pleasure to stand there in the darkness and look out at the green valley shining in the sunlight. But the strangeness was soon past, and the children began to play and run through other parts of the cave. None of these parts was wide, and some were very small. Some led to other rooms made of rock. Some of these were very big. The children could not see the top of them. A person might walk days and nights and never find the end of this cave. He might go down and down and yet further down into the earth, always finding new parts and new rooms. No person knew the whole cave, only part of it was known, and people did not go where others had not gone before. Tom Sawyer knew as much of the cave as any person. The children walked for almost a mile before any of them started to return to the outside. Then one group after another began arriving at the opening on the hillside. They were surprised to see that it was almost night. The boat's bell had been calling for half an hour. However, they thought this end to the day's adventures was delightful. Only the captain of the boat was sorry that he had waited so long. Huck saw the lights of the returning riverboat. He was already watching for Indian Joe. There were clouds in the sky, and the night was becoming very dark. The people in the village began to go home to sleep. The village clock was striking 11, and nothing had happened. Huck also began to think of sleep. Then a noise came to his ear. The next moment, 2 men passed near him. One was carrying something. It must be that box. Should he call Tom? No. The men would carry away the box and it would never be found again. He would follow them. Without shoes, as usual, Huck moved as quietly as a cat. The men went toward the river and then, turning, went up Cardiff Hill, passing the house of an old man named Jones. They arrived at the top of the hill. There, among the trees, they could not be seen. Huck stopped, listened, but heard no sound except his own heart. He knew that he was not far from the house of Mrs. Douglas, an old lady who lived there. Then very near he heard a voice. It was Indian Joe. He said, "There are lights. It is late, but she is not alone." "I can't see any lights." That was the other man. Huck's heart was cold. This was the job Indian Joe had talked of. Mrs. Douglas had often been kind to Huck. Perhaps these men were planning to kill her. He wished that he dared to run to the house and tell her, but the men would catch him. "Look, from here," said Indian Joe. "Now, do you see the lights?" "Yes, forget the job." "Forget it? I have told you before, you can have her money. I do not want it. But her husband put me in jail. Then he died. I can't hurt him, but she is living yet." "You must not kill her." "I will not kill her, but I'm going to cut her face, and that hurts a woman more than killing. You will help me, or I will kill you. And if I must kill you, I will kill her too. Then she can't tell who killed you. If we must do it, then do it now." "No, wait until the house is dark." Huck knew that now all would be quiet, and the quiet would be more fearful than the talk of killing. Very, very carefully he moved down the hill. When he dared, he began to run. He arrived at Mr. Jones's house and beat on the door. Mr. Jones and his two strong sons opened a window and looked out. "What is that noise? Who are you? What do you want?" "Let me come in, quick." "Who are you?" "Huckleberry Finn. Quick, let me come in." "Huckleberry Finn, indeed. Is that a name to make me open a door? But let him come in, boys. What does he want?" "Please, never tell that I told you," were Huck's first words. "I would surely be killed. But Mrs. Douglas has been a good friend to me. I want to tell you." "Speak," the old man said. "We will never tell, boy." 3 minutes later, the old man and his sons, carrying guns, were going up the hill. Huck only part of the way. Then he stopped behind a large stone and listened. Suddenly heard the guns and a cry. He waited for nothing more, but ran down the hill as fast as his legs could carry him. The end of part 4.